All right, Brooke, good afternoon. How's it going?
Conrad, how are you, man? Are you keeping away from some of those fires out in Myrtle Beach?
Yeah, I think it might be a somewhat Myrtle Beach themed episode more than normal today because we got Buck here. But yeah, so far so good. It's mostly burning in an area that's a little bit away from me and mostly not occupied by anybody. That's the good news, is that it's mostly just burning forests, not actual people's houses like happened in California. So far so good. Just need to hope for the best. That's all you can do in these situations, as you know. So
You never would imagine you get wildfires in places like that. And this reminds me of, I think I did a post on this a couple months ago. It's like, the only thing for certain is there's going to be a black swan event, every, 5 to 70 years. It just happens, whether it was 9/11, whether it was the financial meltdown in 2007, wildfires. I mean, look at, people's businesses, in Maui that just got completely destroyed and LA and things like that. So it's the only thing for certain is something catastrophic is unfortunately going to happen every, so often. So be prepared for it.
yeah, 100%. I referenced this a while ago to a client. I was talking about just random things that killed the season. I don't know if you remember this one, Brooke. It was a while ago. There was a red tide that hit Anna Maria probably like 6-7 years ago. This was definitely before COVID. And that took out a season. They're like, yeah, no one wants to come here. It's like, it smells terrible on the beach. Like, we're just losing all of our bookings. Like, just the most random things can happen.
How do you predict that, right? You can't, right? How do you predict COVID? You know what I mean? Like, these are things you cannot predict. I mean, look at, our friends, Angie and Mike Leone with Coconut Condos have a thriving, incredible business. And literally within, a couple hours, it's completely gone. Like, just, it's crazy. It's, I guess there is something to be said about diversification and locations and things like that, which I've always kind of sided against. I've always said, hey, master your market first, then and only then can you expand into other markets,
I hear you. I remember years ago, we worked with a client. This was when I was still at the previous agency that had a business in Hilton Head Island. And his perception was that Hilton Head was very prone to a hurricane. It hadn't happened. But his perception was, man, we're kind of sticking out here. We're here on the South Carolina coast, right? Kind of before you get to Georgia, Savannah, that area. And he was just believed like, hey, it would just take one hurricane and I'm out of business. So he sold the business to Vacasa many years ago. And that was his reason, was like, it wasn't like I wanted to leave or I wanted to stop. He just like had such distress and anxiety over the hurricane. Here we are many years later, a hurricane never has hit Hilton Head yet, knock on wood, but it's just one of those things where that in his mind that was the biggest risk to him continuing on, so he decided to sell in light of that risk. And Vacasa looks like they got a good deal because of it, and who knows, it's hard to predict the future, as you said. So
well, I'm excited for today. We got a good guest, so why don't you kick us off here, Conrad?
Yeah, Buck, well, welcome. We're excited to have you here. Like I said, I joked about it earlier, a Myrtle Beach themed episode in a way, or North Myrtle Beach themed episode, which is uncommon for us, but would love to hear some background from you, how you got started in the space, how you got started in the industry, where you're sitting today, and what you're focused on with your business.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. Kind of going back to your intro, I think the only thing you can expect in this industry is the unexpected. And as long as you're expecting the unexpected, I think you'll do just fine. But yeah, I, like most people, kind of tripped into the vacation rental industry. Grew up in North Myrtle Beach, cut my teeth as a captain for a parasail company there in Cherry Grove. Did that for about 8-10 years. Really got introduced to a unique area of hospitality through that. And I think it was 2020. I got an opportunity to invest into short-term rentals. I had a mentor that kind of gave us a really unique opportunity, and he basically said, "Hey, if you can find a deal and underwrite it, I'll give you the down payment." So I was searching far and wide, and it happened to be a pretty good time to buy real estate and get into short-term rentals. We all know kind of the craziness that happened from 2020, but in our market specifically, it boomed because we were the only area that didn't shut down. So I didn't buy that property in 2020. 2021, I kind of looked and was waiting for the right opportunity. Went under contract into 2021, listed the property. I actually had not even closed on the property yet, and I was already moving all the furniture around. Got permission from the homeowner and the real estate agent, and then I took a few pictures and went ahead and listed it. And some of the local property managers told us we could do about $20,000, maybe $30,000 a year, and I was like, okay, we can break even with that. And we ended up getting about $35,000 in bookings in that first month. And that was really eye-opening, considering they told us that we could expect to do that in a year. fast forward through that year, and we ended up doing $130,000 in bookings. And I realized, okay, we may be onto something here. These other guys told us we could do $30,000. We outpaced that. Let's see if we can do this again. We didn't do anything special, just what everybody else is doing, the dynamic pricing, and really being conscious of the experience we were trying to provide the guest. And we started managing some properties for friends and family, and we were outpacing the market, sometimes up to 400%. Did really well, and people started to catch wind, and they were kicking down our doors asking us to manage their properties. So 2022, we were still managing our property, managing some for friends and family. We went the co-host model, and I think our first real client handed us 15 oceanfront units towards the end of 2022. And since then, we've scaled to, I think we're up to about 65 now, nearly $50 million in assets under management.
That's great. Right on. Nice growth.
It's been a fun journey.
I was gonna, Brooke. How bad is that guy's pro forma who gave Buck a pro forma that said 25,000 and he did 130? That guy just should be fired immediately. That's just horrible.
Who was it? Was this the realtor that gave it to you?
No, it was one of a few of the local management companies.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Some of the legacy management companies.
Crazy.
And
It's one of those things that you're completely right, Buck. So being in the area, that's the joke I'm making earlier for the listener who doesn't know. I'm in North Myrtle Beach, although Buck is not at the moment, but that's where his inventory is. It was so crazy being here throughout COVID because everyone was coming here to the point where like we couldn't go to a restaurant, we couldn't get food,
Mm-hmm.
like the grocery stores were emptied out, and it was like kind of miserable to live here during that time, if I'm being honest. Just in terms of like getting the essentials you need to live your life, but obviously it was amazing for vacation rental demand, and that was something that I did experience as well. Just with the clients that we've worked with in the broader Myrtle Beach area, so just a vastly different experience. It's funny being here versus seeing the numbers that you're sharing. It's it's like, oh, that explains it, because everybody was here and I couldn't go to the grocery store and get food. It's like not the best experience, but yeah.
Well, I've been impressed to see Buck's growth. It's been really neat to watch, and he's actually a comparant market leader. So it's cool to see that, and he's doing a great job. So super proud of him.
Appreciate it.
No, Buck, the growth has been awesome. I know Brooks got a question at the very end we're going to ask that we had to make a joke about because he is still a young Buck, so we got more to come through on that side of things. He said when he graduated high school, and it was definitely the mind was like, oh, that took me a second to figure out if that was possible or not, but it's all good stuff. Well, let's dive into it, Buck. So we're going to talk about the top 10 mistakes. We're going to go through each one and kind of get more of your context or flavor around it. First one is funny because we were just talking about scaling. You talked about scaling too quickly. So you were told that growth is like getting married. You need to be ready for the commitment before you say I do. However, rushing into rapid expansion without the proper infrastructure potentially stretch resources too far and taught me how to grow more deliberately. So how have you managed it growing that quickly? And what have you learned, growing that quickly about how to do it a better or smoother way the next time around?
Yeah. It all comes back to who, not how. I was onboarding with LMPM at the time. And Adrian had mentioned that quote that I mentioned there. And man, it really resonates with me because at the time, I think we had 15, 20 units. We'd scaled pretty fast, but I was like, oh yeah, I'm ready for growth. I can't wait. And as we continued down that trajectory, we were just getting hit left and right with the wheels breaking because we were moving so fast. But I think the biggest thing I learned was being able to lean on the people around you, the people on your team and your mentors, the who, not how method. That is what really got us through that.
So Buck, I did the same thing, man. I'm a growth guy. Everything I've ever done, always done in everything in my life, all my businesses I've ever started, it's I follow more the ready, fire, aim kind of mantra.
Yeah.
And we scale pretty fast. And then in the middle of the season, did I realize, we had to pay that price for that growth. I mean, I had no systems in place. I had no processes in place. I had we didn't do any kind of inspections of the properties. I mean, so we were bringing on properties that were just absolute messes. And I still remember like that opening weekend of Memorial Day, our first like real season in where we actually had a significant amount of inventory. The proverbial wheels of the bus fell off and it was just a shit show. And it was definitely we had to kind of slow down to speed up later on, and we finally fixed it. But man, that first season was a mess, man, and I was just getting pounded from owners and guests, so it felt like there was about a 10-week season, 12-week season where it was just utter chaos, 7 days a week, 13-hour days.
Mm-hmm. One of our core values starting off was all gas, no brakes. And that was something I made sure that everybody resonated with and held true to. And we actually, at our end of the year little goal setting retreat this year, we decided, okay, maybe let's take that one off. Maybe that one doesn't resonate with us anymore. Let's use the gas wisely.
Right. Because even a race car driver has to actually use the brake, right? Like,
or else you crash into the wall, right?
Yeah, crash in the wall, right? Like, it's fine to go fast, and you can win the race going fast, but you've also got to like sometimes put it in third gear and tap the gas and hit the brake and then go again fast once you get it lined up again. So well, maybe Buck, then that dovetails nicely into kind of number 2 and number 3. Maybe I'll sandwich these together because it both talks about team and then also building a leadership structure. So number 2, you say underestimating the importance of a strong team. I'll come back to that. And then number 3 was hiring from the top down. So maybe talk to me about both those mistakes, what you've learned about it. How do you find the right people? How do you build the right team? And then what has been the top down hiring philosophy when you find the right people to make sure that they're in the right seats in the company?
Yeah. So I was very conscious early on of trying to get ahead of the growth and the pace that we were growing. So I made a decision to hire from the top down versus from the bottom up. This essentially, the better route might have been hiring some VAs first, putting them in place, and then hiring some more maintenance guys, and then putting the executive team in place. But I wanted to really make sure that we had the strongest foundation possible. So I hired that key operations person, that key finance person. It was great. And it helped us stay ahead and continue to adapt. And that's still the same foundation and team we have to this day. But I had to sacrifice a lot along the way. Personally, just my personal finances, making sure that everybody was getting paid what they needed to. These were all friends at the time I had worked with in previous businesses. Some of them I made custom surfboards with back in the day. But I had convinced them to leave their full-time jobs to come chase this dream with me. So that whole leaders eat last mentality, I was eating those words. And it was tough. I'm thankful for it. And I'm thankful for, making that mistake and hiring from the top down. But I feel like if I would have started from the bottom up and built slower, built the right team, I could have personally ate along the way versus kind of struggling and limping along.
Yeah. Well, I think you said something that's kind of interesting. Like some of these people you worked with before, and you knew who they were, you knew their personalities, you knew everything about them, and that's so important. I mean, when I started Vintory, same thing. Like, right, first call I made was Brian. You know what I mean? And I knew him already. I mean, we worked together 2 different companies before. It was just kind of like getting the band back together. We knew each other's quirks and everything else. And then, I brought in Rob, my chief revenue officer, where we worked together for years, previously. So having that experience and knowing all that really does help. But I love that, that saying you just said is, what is it? The leaders eat last. That's a great one. I got to remember that. But I also remember in the early days of starting Vantage, like for me, it was so helpful to get more of like, as opposed to getting like specialists. If you think of the evolution, like to me, it was more like getting the generalist first and then evolving to specialist, because in the beginning, you need those generalists that can do everything and they're not afraid to get their hands dirty. They can roll their sleeves. They're not just, a VP of marketing or something that's never going to, jump on a call. You need somebody that can, like I said, roll their sleeves and do whatever they have to do. But you need somebody that is going to be proactive. You need somebody that's going to be friendly. They have a fast pace. Oh, by the way, and they're accurate and precise. So what we're talking about is really a unicorn. There's not too many of them out there, but if you can get those in those early days, that will go out there and get their hands dirty, she or he is well worth their weight in gold. And then obviously as you start to grow and scale, you can kind of move more into the specialist roles. That always worked really well for me.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it kind of just plays into the next one, not playing to people's strengths, really understanding each person and how they work, giving them the right tools and resources they need to do their job well. And then if they're not doing their job well, looking within, okay, am I being the right kind of leader? Am I giving them the right resources? And then being able to direct them to a new position if it makes the most sense. Like early on, hired Houston for marketing, and it turns out he's an exceptional COO. And I can't, like, he would excel at both roles, but playing him to his strengths as an operator made so much more sense, and it has done so much good for the company.
Yeah, I mean, I beat this horse to death, but on that, with culture index and predictive index. But yeah, just when you find their personality profiles and just get the right people in the right seats, and then make a lot of times, very often, it's like, hey, get them on the team, and then we can figure out where they fit. I mean, very often I would see somebody who was a perfect profile, even if they didn't have the experience. I'd get them on the team because I knew eventually there would be a position open for them. But you're right, very often you can massage them. And we've had a couple people on our team, many people actually, that we've moved around from many different positions. I'm just thinking of Kristen DeWitt on our team right now. I mean, she's been with us for almost since the beginning. She started out as an account manager, and she was struggling early on, almost to the point where we almost let her go. And then we realized she's really good at marketing. She's really good at technology. So now she's actually running our Scrum for our developers, and she loves it. She's doing what she's meant to do. But again, we were on the verge of literally almost getting rid of her, and she wasn't happy, or she was going to quit. And then now we've got her in a great role, and now we've had her, like I said, almost since the beginning. And just getting that person and getting them in the right seat is so important.
You spoke to the personality profiles. Is that something that you will have your new employees maybe do a test? I applied for Red Bull back in the day for a film position, and I remember they had their I think it was called a wings analyzer. And I took that personality test, and I learned so much about myself.
Yep.
That's not something I've personally implemented, but is that something that you've done, Brooke? Yeah.
So I'm a big proponent of it. Been talking about it for a while. There's a gentleman, I don't know if you know, Steve Trover, in this industry with Better Talent. He has a partnership with Predictive Index. Mm-hmm. Predictive Index is a psychometric personality assessment tool that allows you to analyze all your applicants. So really, you do it at the top of the funnel, when they're coming in. And what you do is you create a profile for the positions you're trying to hire for. And then what you do is you then see if it's a good fit, if they're a good fit for that role, and they're naturally meant to do what they're supposed to be doing. And I've been using these kind of tools for over a decade. It's probably one of the biggest game changers. Every single employee at Vintory has gone through this, and every single one is in the role they're in because they're doing what they're naturally gifted at. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have 4.9 stars on Glassdoor, 100% authentic, legit reviews, is because people are doing what they're supposed to do. They're doing what they're gifted at, and they're doing what they enjoy. And when you do that, magic happens. So big fan of tools. So next time you're looking to hire, I would recommend using Steve Trover, Better Talent, and using Predictive Index.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to check that one out.
It's always I think I made this joke before, Brooke, but it's always jarring when I read mine, because I'm like, man, it really bothers me how some of these little smaller quirks in my personality, that I never said because it asks you questions that don't relate to that thing, and then it makes assumptions about you that are pretty darn accurate, not 100%, but pretty close to it, where it's like, oh, that bothers me, yep, okay, yeah, I like that, yeah, and then you start nodding your head a little bit, like it makes total sense. I had this situation recently, Brooke. I was trying to get someone to cold call who shouldn't have been cold calling, and that person hated doing it, and I was asking them to do it, and they did it because I asked them. So it's like, all right, they have enough respect, and we were on the same page enough where they would do it. But I was just trying to put a square peg in a round hole, or I was trying to use the wrong personality assessment for that thing. Took them off that, got them on something else, and now everything is awesome, and they're actually so much happier. So it's like we all have to learn these lessons sometimes repeatedly, put them in our brain. Well. That closes the book in a way, Buck, on the people side of things, kind of strategy, team building, those kind of things. You actually broke yours down by category. First guest to do that, I'm pretty sure, by the way, where he actually has the categories. So
thank you, Buck, for doing that.
Yeah. He brought something new to the table, which is awesome. So in your next kind of set here that we're going to go through, we talked more about the operational side of it. I imagine it might relate back a little bit to the pieces you were talking about earlier, like the growth and stuff like that. But let's dive in these. So number 5 was inadequate financial forecasting and budget management. So early days, the financial planning wasn't really robust, didn't really understand the cash flow coming in, maybe going out to the level of detail and robustness that you needed to. What's kind of the way that you've helped with forecasting, understanding what's coming in, what's going out, when those things occur? How have you improved kind of the accounting and financial forecasting side of the business?
Failing forward. That's pretty much it. We're learning from our mistakes every step of the way, and when we're not tracking our finances, you don't know where the money's going. So how can you hold on to it if you don't know where it's going? So the financial forecasting has been huge for us. Within the past past year or so, we've really honed in on that, and we've been able to kind of plan out our budgets a little more in advance and predict booking and revenue, and it's been super helpful. Making sure we don't overspend or underspend, and then getting the right people in place, having a good bookkeeper. We were very fortunate from very early on that we had a bookkeeper from the beginning. You would be surprised how many businesses don't have their books clean whatsoever. And we were fortunate to be able to implement that early on. But I think now we're trying to be conscious of bringing that back in-house so that we have a little further control over what that looks like and the story that our P&Ls and our balance sheet is telling. I think when you start considering maybe acquisitions or doing roll-ups or whatever it may be, maybe selling your company one day, I think it's very smart to think with that end goal in mind and start building and preparing now so that that story that you're telling on your P&Ls and balance sheet is the story that you want told 5 years from now, when it's time to exit. You want to make sure that you've had everything set in place, because that's only going to help you exponentially when it's time to make that move.
Yeah. Did your bookkeeper, Buck, have experience in short-term rentals before?
Yeah, she's had a little bit of experience. I think in a couple other markets throughout South and North Carolina. It was helpful, and I think it's got us to a great point. But we still want to tell a little better story. Somebody told me one time, and it really resonated with me, that your P&Ls and your balance sheet, you're just trying to tell a story. You want to tell it as clear as you can. And I think along the way, the story that we were trying to tell got a little jumbled. So definitely trying to be conscious of making sure that that's the right story.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have seen, though, having a bookkeeper that knows and understands short-term rentals from the gate out of the gates is super helpful. Having somebody, just getting a general bookkeeper, look, you need to have someone, don't get me wrong, but it really is helpful to have somebody that has that experience to know how to set up your chart of accounts. Shout out to Jen Ford. She's a fractional CFO. She can help at least get your books started. Like if you're starting out, hire her to kind of get those books set up straight in the beginning. And then one thing we did, and I've told this story before, but I was a corporate finance major in college. Got into mortgage banking right out of college, and then ended up building out. I would always build out my businesses and performas first. So I knew exactly where we needed to be month over month, year over year. I had assumptions all built in there. And as we got more and more data, those performas got more and more accurate and more precise. And I could tell within a couple percentage points literally where we were going to be. And I still remember to this day, like it was one of those things like, we were struggling as we were growing because we were investing everything back into growth. And, Conrad, you'll appreciate this being in this industry for a while. Like we had a $39 insurance policy, and we were doing a lot of reservations, and we were just struggling to make money. And I just went through the assumptions, and I just changed it from like 39 to 69 or 39 to 59. And it was literally the difference between losing money and making money, at the end of the year. And sure enough, so we made that change, and sure enough, we were profitable at the end of the year. But it was just so simple, just a simple little change, and what that did to it. And then again, we could see that progression. We could see where we were going. We knew exactly what our numbers were going to be, and it was super, super helpful. And just to the last point, Buck, and you nailed it, kind of working that reverse engineering, set your goal and then work backwards. Jason Sprinkle, I remember after he sold 360 Blue, he came into actually my team, and we did our all hands meeting, and he just kind of talked about, that experience. And he said he wished he would have known all the stuff he knew then, because he would have done that, right? He would have reverse engineered his business based on the goals and the metrics and all those, key indicators, there's KPIs of what the acquiring companies were looking for. And that's kind of what he did with, with Key Data, and it was very successful. And I've, on that note, a little plug. I'm going to be speaking at VR Nation with with Dylan Burgess at C2G Advisors. I'm speaking at the VR Nation webinar or conference, and we're doing a session on reverse engineering a $10 million exit for your vacation rental management company. So taking a lot of what you just talked about there, what are those key metrics? What are those key things that you have to look for? And just reverse engineer it. And then you know exactly what you need to hit to be able to hit those goals to get that exit. If that's what you want, if you want a $20 million exit, you reverse engineer it on that. And I don't want to say it's easy because you still have to execute, but at least you know what you need to execute on. And just take this one step further. You know, I was lucky enough many years ago to do an Ironman triathlon. And the only way I was able to do it, because considering I couldn't swim one lap in a pool at the time, I never ran more than a 5K. But all I did was I just had to lay out that plan. I had to set out the goal. I had to then reverse engineer it. And I knew my workouts. And I knew as long as I did my workouts and I followed that plan, barring injury, you know, barring a crash or something like that, I was gonna hit it and execute on it. And sure enough, I was able to do that. But that was all based on that kind of that reverse engineering mind frame.
And now think about it, Brooke. You know, David Agati does an Ironman just in the mornings. Like when he's just bored, he just does an Ironman before he goes on the next.
That's right.
No, I'm joking, of course. But yeah, I think that I do think that's often something that, you know, when you're getting started, and maybe this was kind of the case that you talked about a few minutes ago, Buck, it's just like survival. And I know, Brooke, we talked about that at length, right? It's just like, all right, I just got to I got to make payroll. Like I just got to get to the next month. It's like, oh, great. Like I used to feel that way at times. Like the beginning of the month just happened. We're recording this the start of March. And I'd be like, oh, thank God, like more invoices are about to get sent out and I can start to collect again, you know, and get more cash in the door. And then I need to go spend that obviously on all the things we need to do to get going. But then eventually build a little cushion. And then each month doesn't stress you out as much. And it's more like looking at it by a quarterly basis. But every once in a while you need to like zoom all the way out and be like, all right, like I need to think about this more a little bit at that high level. But it does take time, I think, to get to that spot. And so I don't think anyone should feel bad if they're not there. But I also think that if you ignore that for a really long period of time, you know, I'm not someone who does what Brooke is describing. I don't build it out in a spreadsheet. I just kind of figure it out as I go. Maybe that's one of my weaknesses or one of my little personality traits that I need to work on. So I've had to, you know, build the plane a little bit more on that side of things. Whereas I knew exactly what tactics and strategies I was going to use, but I didn't know all the numbers. So that took me some while, I think, to learn those pieces for sure. Your sixth one here, Buck, was talking about data provider. I'm curious what you consider data provider. Do you mean like the PMS layer? Do you mean like you mentioned dynamic pricing a few minutes ago? I know you mentioned a few vendors so far, like LMPM, for example, but the mistake was without reliable data early on, you missed out on insights that could perhaps help you make better decisions or make the right process. So what are kind of some of the different tools and data that you've implemented in the business to give yourself better decision making?
The biggest one for us was going to be key data. Being able to see all the information from our bookings, from ADR, how we're pacing against the market, the inventory in the market, who allows pets, who doesn't, who's got a pool, how many 5 bedrooms are there. When we were able to lean into that data, we were really able to situate ourselves into a corner of the market that hadn't been tapped into yet. In an area with 10,000 rentals, I think in North Myrtle Beach, we were able to carve out a nice little chunk in a beautiful little area that just hadn't been exploited yet. So we were able to lean into that demographic based on the data and provide a unique experience for the guests that they weren't seeing at the other properties within that demographic. And that really allowed us to set ourselves apart and generate sometimes up to, like I mentioned before, 400% better than the competition for that same property. So that's been really huge. And then just from a financial forecasting, et cetera, being able to, be able to track what we did last year for each individual property in a very consumable way, and see what the ADR was, what the occupancy was, and be able to project that out over the next year has been huge. We got key data, I think maybe a year and a half, 2 years into the game, but I just wish we had that data from the very beginning. And then two, kind of going back to starting with that end goal in mind. Okay, maybe we want to have an exit one day, maybe we don't, but now I have all the data that someone looking to buy our company would ever want in their in Key Data's company snapshot. So being able to provide that information in so much more detail than they would typically see, and know what data they're looking for, it's been a game changer for us.
Yeah. No, we're all big fans of Key Data and what they build over there. It's a great tool, and many of our partners, utilize it. We're partners with them on the comparance side and also the Vintory side. But one thing, it's funny you mentioned something. We had a partner that came to us. And, speaking of data, so Vintory, we have the largest database of vacation rental homeowners in the world. And we had this partner come to us, and they told us they just signed up, and they had some really aggressive goals. And the first thing we did with them was we kind of pulled up their market, and we drew a polygon around. They had a very little niche market where they were targeting, and we determined they only had about 250 targets in their area. That's it, 250. Mm-hmm. But their goals were so aggressive on where they wanted to grow, and we kind of told them right out of the gates, like, guys, like, on average, about 10% of the inventory changes hands on a given year. So you're only looking, 25 properties are probably going to change hands this year. You want to add 35 to 40 every year. You're not going to get 100% or even more than 100%, obviously, of the properties that are changing hands. So what we did is we kind of made that very abundantly open to them. And then what we ended up doing is obviously opening it up a little bit and expanding into some other markets. It's tangential. So it wasn't too far, but it was. I think it was eye-opening for them to realize that, hey, you need to actually look at what that TAM is, look at what's going to change hands, and then identify like how much of that inventory you actually going to get. Because otherwise, we're just setting them up for failure if they think that those goals they're going to be able to achieve those goals. So it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and I forgot about something that I would love to speak to: the feeder markets, that the data that they provide from. Being able to see where your guests are coming from. Me being a marketing guy, that is huge because I'm able to see exactly what locations all of our guests are coming from, where those hot spots are, and now I can market directly to those markets. And that's where our guests are coming from. So we're doubling down where all the guests are coming from, and it's paying dividends from the direct booking side when we're doing our digital marketing. So having data like that is just invaluable.
I forget who exposed this to me, Brooke, but this idea of SMART goals is something that we've implemented, in our kind of goal setting, where it's like specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. I think you nailed achievable and measurable there, pretty well, where it's like nothing worse than I think getting given a goal that is not achievable, because I think it's actually super demotivating for someone to say, like, in a market where there's only 250 listings, I want 500 listings. It's like, okay, I want a unicorn and, I want to go to Mars. Like those are, at least at the time of this recording, pretty unrealistic goals. Although the Mars thing seems possible maybe with Elon, but it's like when people say that, I think it actually demotivates your team. But when you say, 25 listings are changing hands this year, I want to get 10 of them. It's like, I think we could do that. You almost like rally around it because it's a lot more achievable and realistic. And I think that kind of speaks to that. And a lot of people just make stuff up. And so I think giving people a dose of reality, Brooke, is so critical, honestly, at times.
Yes, no, it needs to be. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. But I like the way that you're describing it, Buck, which is like a lot of people don't use those resources available to them. Mm-hmm. They don't actually go and ask the chamber or ask people about that data. And then they just, kind of shrug their shoulders as someone that's been on the marketing side before too. They go, yeah, or they just use anecdotes like, yeah, I think a few guests come from here. They don't spend even 30 minutes researching it, which would actually give our ads like a lot better reach. So sometimes we have to do that research ourselves, but like it's better when like the client's involved in that process and they're kind of thinking through it. And how are they going to get the right homeowners that they're going to reach out to? How are they going to market to the guests the right way? Sometimes it just takes that 30 minutes of research to get the right data in place. So I think that's so important. All right, flipping the page here a little bit to maintenance, something we haven't really talked about too much so far, maybe a little bit on the team side, being reactive instead of proactive on the maintenance side of things. So property maintenance issues are inevitable. They're going to happen. But how do you make sure that when you see an issue pop up, you've dealt with it, hopefully in the best way possible, or can you do something that's going to reduce the need for future property maintenance and support? What's kind of been your experience there?
Yeah, so early on, we struggled with this. We had a good maintenance team, but we would wait for something to go wrong before the issue got handled. We're very conscious of having inspections after every single guest leaves, after the cleaners are done. Sometimes the cleaners miss stuff. Being able to have another set of eyes, and not only another set of eyes, but a maintenance guy who knows how to fix the issue, run their hands through the property, run their eyes through the property, and if something's broke, they can fix it on the spot, and maybe it's something small, but that something small could be huge in the guest size, or it could lead to more problems in the future. On top of being proactive in knowing storms are coming. Conrad, you're familiar with the area. Cherry Grove, if you pee in your yard, it's going to flood. So being conscious of that and getting ahead of the floods coming, you see we got a big storm coming. We got a lot of rain and the moon's going to be full. Go to those properties, set everything up, bring the furniture inside, and then you're not going to have to chase the trash can down 3 avenues. So being conscious of that stuff and trying to get ahead of the curve has been huge for us, and it really shows the homeowners we care, because we do. We just weren't early on. We didn't know what we needed to put in place to show that we cared. So that's been huge.
I think the best example I saw of this being proactive was actually Steve Trover with All Star Vacation Homes down in Florida. So there's this one community called Reunion Resort, really super high end, large bed count, custom homes, like just incredible, like the best of the best. These things are doing $200,000-$300,000 plus in gross booking revenue. But what he would do is his maintenance team was never in the office. They would get in the office like in the morning and at night, and that was it. But the rest of the day, they were in the communities, and they would go to any home that was open, and they would park their beautifully wrapped vans in the driveway, and they would go inside, and they would just walk the home. Mm-hmm. And they would have their screwdriver, they had their tools, and they would just see if there's anything that they could do to make that property better. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's that little proactive, the chair, the kitchen table, the kitchen chair that's a little wobbly, where guess what? If you tighten it right there, you're going to be fine. But guess what? If it gets a little bit more loose and a person sits on it and it breaks, now you got to, you're not going to have a matching set. So you got to go buy 4 chairs. So that proactiveness would just obviously make the entire experience better. And again, but here's the nice side benefit of that. The vans were always out in front. They were always out in the community. And guess who drives by? Owners, other owners. And the number one referral source we got was always, we saw your van in the community. We see your vans everywhere. So you get this nice benefit. So you should never have your maintenance people sitting in your office. And when they had a call, like a guest needed something, or the property needed something, they were there immediately because they were in that community rather than the 15-minute drive that it took for them to get there. So there's my little soapbox. If you have maintenance people, have them chill and sit in the properties and go around and testing every little thing that they can to make it better, because they'll see things that a lot of other people aren't going to see.
Yeah. I think that's a common thing though, where we, wait to react to a problem. But like you're describing, Brooke, it's like, especially once it's a fixed cost, like if everyone's on salary, the maintenance crew, it's like you're paying them anyway. So you may as well all right, go walk it and see if you can find something, and fix it that way. That's actually brilliant. I've never seen that exactly work in that way, but I like the idea. It's like a moving billboard basically too.
That's exactly what
the wrap vans.
They spent so much money on getting like the vans were wrapped. They were beautifully designed. Like it was just intentional. Like there was never any old vans. Like it was exactly that. It was a bunch of huge billboards in the community, keeping that billboard in front of them was a great source.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
All right. Well, let's go over to the homeowner side. Brooke, you just touched on it a second ago, this idea of, working with the homeowner. Obviously, we want to make sure we're, getting new ones. And that's obviously a core thing that we've talked a lot about on the podcast. But number 8 in your list here, Buck, was listing based on homeowner preferences over data-driven insights. So the analogy I've heard here before is like, who's in the driver's seat? Is Sea Mountain Vacations in the driver's seat, or is the homeowner in the driver's seat? So what's kind of been your learnings here of like maybe listening too much to homeowners and then figuring out kind of where to place them and how to listen to them, but also, use your information to make the best decision?
Yeah, it's definitely been a fine line. You want to be conscious of what the homeowners are saying. It's their property, it's their pride and joy. They're the ones that have spent the money on it and all the time to renovate the properties, et cetera. But they don't always know the best ways to manipulate the market or the pricing or the listing or the marketing, whatever it may be. And the times that we have kind of gone against what we know is best, and listen to that homeowner that is a little overbearing on what they think is right, it's always bit us in the butt. It's been nice because we can always go back and say, I told you so. Not that we ever do. But being conscious of staying true to our guns, and really sticking to what we know, and educating the homeowners along the way on why maybe what they're saying doesn't make sense has been big learning process for us. Definitely early on.
Yeah. I think that's a common one, Rook, right? People just don't always listen there. So I think that's one that we beat up sufficiently at this point. Well, maybe number 9 and number 10 are kind of correlated in some way here, Buck. So number 9, you talked about straying too far outside of your target property or homeowner avatar.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear about that. And then number 10 is treating every market the same. So these are kind of the same problem set in a way, right? Which is like,
Yep.
What am I actually good at? Who do I actually want to serve? Who am I great at serving? And then number 10 is kind of, all right, now that I know this really well, what do I know to be true? So maybe you could talk to both those points. How do you make sure that you're straying or you're focusing on the right thing? It's easy to get distracted. The woman in the red dress or the red herring or the shiny object syndrome is kind of something that we all fight sometimes. How do you compare that with then also knowing that I'm going to treat this market in the way that I know the best outcome can come from that?
Yeah, really early on, we said yes to everybody. I don't care if you had a tent somewhere by the beach, we would say yes, and we would rent it out and we would make you money with it too. But that's not always the best property to have on our program. Maybe it doesn't reflect the level of quality that we want our guests to know is our standard. But sometimes you'll have homeowners that may not fit the mold either. I would say over the years, there's 10% of homeowners who are going to come up with 80% of the problems. And if you focus on the right homeowners, you're going to be able to do a better job for them. And ultimately, you can have more bandwidth for more properties, more homeowners. So I think being conscious of that was huge. Something we did early on. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Flip the Script. Great book. Got to check it out if you haven't. But essentially, like when you go to college, you have to, they interview them and you have to convince them that you're a good fit for them so you can pay them money. So we try to be very conscious in flipping the script on the homeowners. We know we're a good fit for you, but why are you a good fit for us? I want you as the homeowner I want you to pitch yourself on why you think you should be a part of our program, because we know the level of quality that we can provide and the amount of revenue that we can provide. But we want to make sure that you are a good fit with our culture, with our guest culture. And we want to make sure that you're trying to give the best experience possible to the guests and not just milk your property for money and run it into the ground like some people are trying to do. So being conscious of that is huge and will pay dividends for you in the future, especially as you scale.
I love that. Buck, what are some of the questions that you asked to actually flush that out? Like, how do you actually know, if they are going to be a good fit? Do you have like a little questionnaire? Do you have like an interview skeleton you use?
Not necessarily. We probably should. We just go over. We like to meet every single one of our homeowners. Our core 4 is going to be on every single call, and we like to gauge their personalities, where they're from, their experience in real estate. And you don't have to have a lot of experience in real estate, but you have to be willing to go above and beyond for the guest. Not just for yourself. And that's criteria that we're very conscious of. We want to make sure that you're willing to maybe invest that extra dollar in that amenity that's going to make you more money, but also provide that guest with a better experience. We haven't really found that questionnaire or criteria to kind of go down the list on, but that may be something that we look for in the future and really refine that.
Is it more just gut
It's
feel?
definitely helped us a lot. Just being conscious.
Is it more just gut
feeling for sure?
And if let's say out of you said I love this idea of having the core 4, but if one person says no, they don't have a good gut feeling, do you say no on the property, or is it like a vote system, or is this a democracy? Like or you get to make the ultimate call? How do you decide?
We have one that'll say no on just about every property, just for the sake of being the one guy that says no. So we wouldn't have any properties if we went that route. But yeah, pretty much a voting system, majority rules. And if it doesn't fit our partner avatar or our home avatar, then it's not a good fit. Where before we would bend and break the rules, now we're not. If it's not outside of what we're looking for, then we're just going to pass.
Yeah, I think that's just hard to do. It's hard to
It's
do, right,
tough.
Buck? It's so tough, to have a dollar, bill sitting on the ground, and
Yeah.
there's conditions though attached with it, right? Like you can't just pick it up and stuff it into your pocket. There's always other considerations that actually tie into that, and that's the thing you probably had to learn the hard way, as a lot of people have. So
Yeah, it's tough.
yeah. Awesome. Well, those are the 10 mistakes, Brooke. So I think we got one more question. We joked about it at the intro, so now we got to pay that off here at the close here. We got to ask Buck this question that you need to rephrase a little bit, I think, from your typical
love
approach.
it. Yeah. So Buck, again, thanks for being on here. Really, again, just so happy to see the growth that you've had, and you've done such an incredible job. And again, congratulations on another Comparent Market Leader Award. So well done. But yeah, so if normally we go back and we say, to the question I ask is, can you go back and give your 25-year-old self some advice? What would it be? But we just found out that you're only 28. So that's only going back a couple years. So let's go back a little bit further. So if you go back to your, call it 21, 22-year-old self and give yourself a little bit of advice, what would it be?
Man, I'd tell them to dream bigger. I would say I've always been a big dreamer. And I've always set very big goals for myself, but that goalpost keeps getting moved as I keep hitting those goals and those dreams. So I would tell him to dream bigger than he thinks is possible, because he'll get there.
I love it. Reminds me of that quote from David Goggins.
That's awesome.
Take the governor off your brain. So.
Yeah.
Nice. I like that. Well, awesome. Buck, thanks for hopping on. Good to chat with someone, obviously, who's a little bit knowledgeable about the North Myrtle Beach market. It's encountered somewhat regularly, but some people only know us for Myrtle Beach, which is a very different beast, as you know. So next time you're down here, we'll have to meet up or something whenever you find yourself actually locally here in the market. Well, awesome. One thing we need from you, dear listener, before you depart is a review. So go to your podcast app of choice. iTunes, Spotify is where we get the most downloads. Click follow, click subscribe. That way you get future episodes so you can listen to more awesome guests like Buck. And also, while you're there, leave us 5-star reviews. We appreciate that. The way more people see the show, more people see what we got going on here, which is an awesome thing for us to keep doing on the podcast side of things. That brings us to a close. Thank you so much, and we'll catch everybody on the next episode.